I'm so glad that you're here, because with you, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have an audience to see my wonderful slides and hear my talk. But mainly, I get a lot of joy out of sharing anything about intuition and dreams. That's my heart, that's my passion, that's my love. So, what else is different in May? We weren't all bundled up in coats, and it wasn't dark outside, so I had no idea how many people would or wouldn't come. So maybe for you it's not a big deal coming out at night.
Oh, yes, it is.
It is?
Oh, yes.
Well, I want to thank you doubly. And I want to thank Nikki and Missy, okay, from RVML for having me here. And I have another thank you to two people who aren't here. One is Ed Kellogg. Some of you might know Ed. You know Ed?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I hope so. Move your hand like that.
Good man.
Good man. Well, the good man gave me some wonderful input for my presentation tonight. So I'm thanking him for that. He's not here. He's just has finished co-hosting an incredible 2-week online seminar on the many worlds of lucid dreaming. But the other person to thank is my friend Bob Haas, who's also from the Dream Association. And Bob created these wonderful slides. So as you're looking at these, I don't want you to think I'm multi-talented to talk and to do all that I'm doing. So enjoy the slides and enjoy every part of what's happening tonight. So, precognition, what a magical word. Mm-hmm. How many of you know what precognition is? Be careful, I'll give you this to come up here and to the talk. Well, okay, we're going to talk about precognition. How many of you have had precognitive dreams? Okay, that is good, that is good. How many of you haven't? The ones who haven't, raised your hands. So, my hope tonight is I have an agenda to stimulate you about this area, to empower you that you too could have and can have precognitive dreams. And then to give you a sense of, gee, I want to set up a practice. I really want to do this myself. I'm going to get my notebook and I'm going to follow blah, blah, blah. So are you up for this? Okay. Now, a couple disclosures. This is a tour, and it features me, me doing every part of the tour. And Nikki was the one that kind of spurred my topic for tonight. Do you remember when we finished in May, you said, it would be interesting to have you back and hear how you went from being such a straight psychologist into the world of psy. So I thought, gee, that's an interesting journey. Many people still can't believe how I have done what I did, going from there, straight what? Straight psychology professor, academia, teaching, knowing nothing about psy, to this wonderful world of parapsychology. So this tour is my journey. And in this tour, you will see that I've lived in many different places, and each place had something to do with my development. And I've arranged my slides. I've had lots and lots and lots of dreams, but I particularly picked dreams that would have a teaching moment about precognition, and a moment for someone and something to inspire you. So here we are. I have another thing to ask. I was taking a poll, but I didn't ask how many people dream. That's a basic question. So you're all beautiful dreamers. You didn't raise your hand. I just want to make sure. I want to harass him. That's my husband. I can harass him. Okay, just make sure he's awake and paying attention. So here I am, bridging the gap from psychology to parapsychology. And as I said, that was the theme that we were looking at. How did I go from being involved as I was to being in this world of psi? As we go along, this is kind of part one, my talk. And my part one is giving you information, sharing the slides. But every once in a while, I'm going to look at you and ask you a question or two to join me. I'm going to ask, and you're going to join in. Part two, you're going to have the opportunity to ask me anything you want to know. Maybe I know it, I hope I will know it, to be able to give you a good answer. So, are you ready for the ride, the tour, to fasten your seatbelts? Here we go. First slide, second slide. It doesn't work.
He's pointed up the
This way.
computer.
Point it toward the computer. On the back.
Oh, I have to do this way.
There you go.
Magic, this is really, really magic. Okay, precognition, knowing something before. It's a warning, it's a preview. Something happens to give us a sense of what is coming up, what is going to happen. Now, it's very important that I say this next part, that it has the potential, the probability to come true. It doesn't mean as we go along that it absolutely will come true. And remember, I mentioned the word empower before. That's why it's good to know about your precognitive dreams, because it empowers you to make any changes you need to and want to make. So I'll talk more about that as we go on. So the precognition is knowing in advance something is coming. We dream it, live it. It comes up in our life. It expands perception beyond ordinary reality. How could I have dreamt about someone that I never met? And here they are. That's expanding my reality. How could I talk about being in a situation I've never been in? Oh my goodness. So, the self is not limited to time and space. That's what I want you to take away tonight. That with these dreams, it expands, and we go into another dimension I'll talk about, where the information there gets transmitted back to us in our bedroom when we're sound asleep. It never ceases to amaze me. I have not lost my fascination with this area. So let the journey continue. Oops. I'm a slow learner. Okay. I guess I'm very slow. Okay. In my dream, this was a fairly recent dream, I celebrate and drink champagne, and I felt really happy. Afterwards, my father and stepmother come bring me another bottle of champagne. I didn't ask if this was an alcohol-free zone, and I'm talking about champagne. But it doesn't matter whether it's champagne or light champagne. If this were your dream, what would it say to you? What would the message say to you?
Depends on the relationship with those people.
Mm-hmm. So this is your dream now. You had this dream. Okay. There are no wrong answers, by the way.
You're celebrating something, and your parents are joining you in a celebration of something.
Okay.
But that's just a fake.
Yeah.
Facet.
Yeah. Something is being celebrated. Well, I had a pretty gloomy, sad month before I had this. And without going into all the stuff that went on, because stuff went on for everybody in this room, we go through a downer, and I was going through a down time. And I had this dream, and I was absolutely ecstatic. Oh my goodness, just like the wheel in the tarot. Do you know the wheel? The tarot card, the wheel? It's turning. Something is turning around. So this was kind of strange to me to see my father and stepmother, who are no longer living there, bringing me champagne. And I said, what is this about? And then I had to think, and I said, the anniversary of my father's passing is coming up. Maybe something on that date is going to happen. Maybe something. So I looked up the date, And I didn't just sit there with the calendar, waiting and wondering. But sure enough, when that time came, voila, it was magic. It was magic. What was magic? The doom and gloom turned really into hope and joy and happiness. So I welcomed that dream. I welcomed that dream. Now, here's another question for you. Has anybody ever given you a book, a photograph, an object, or some advice that changed your life? Good. Ramon.
Yeah, I was given a book, A Course in Miracles.
Ah,
Yeah, when I was younger.
yes.
When I was like 15.
Do you want to say a sentence or two, how that changed you?
Well,
Or
it really.
what it meant to you.
Yeah, it was like it went really deep.
Yeah.
And it changed the course
Yeah,
in my future decisions.
yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. There are moments in everybody's life that something is a pivotal point. So, guess what mine came from? Also a book. Also a book. But I don't think you could guess unless you're being very intuitive. What kind of a book?
A book about dreams?
No. But good try.
Yes, so.
Good try. But in a way, it was related. Yes, it was related to dreams. Okay. Book. Book. Uh-oh. I hit the wrong thing. Book. My mother hands me a small book called Sidney Omar's Monthly Forecast for Pisces. Who knows the name Sidney Omar and astrology? Good. I'm glad somebody, because that's in my script, that somebody would know. Well, Sidney Omar was a world-class astrologer, and he used to put out these little books for everybody's horoscope sign. So my mother gives it to me, as only a mother could say. When she handed me this, I screwed up my face, and I said, "Oh, Ma, this is silly." She says, "It's cute." As only a mother can say. "Oh, it's cute. Try it. Try it." So, what did I have to lose? My mother gave me this book. Oops. I'm sorry. I'll learn eventually. So I open the book, and immediately it says, Pisces, keep a record of your dreams, because something surprising will happen soon. So what did I have to lose? Just looking for a book or something to write it in, I found an old steno book, and I write down, so let me see if I do have a dream. So are you ready? My first dream that I entered in that book. Oops. I don't know what's wrong with me. Okay. May 1971. Now look at me and say, "Oh, is she that old? Is she, I'm not old at all." But I have been doing this for 50 years, and I didn't realize it until I put this slide presentation together. It's been such a joyous ride. But May 1971, I drive a car, put my foot on the brake pedal, and it goes right to the floor. And the car turns over, but I get out unharmed. Well, when I woke up from that dream, my heart was beating rapidly. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what was happening in my life. And it took me about 5 minutes to just look around and realize I was in my bedroom. I thought I was in the middle of an accident. Now, I didn't tell you anything about myself in those days. I was a professor of psychology, an assistant professor, teaching at a college. And I taught psychology. I'm a psychologist, a PhD, as you know, psychologist. And I loved psychology. I loved what I was doing. And I was very, I want to say strict about my beliefs in psychology. I didn't know anything else. I didn't know. So one part of me was a psychologist, and the other part, I had an avocation. I don't know if you could guess. I was a dancer, okay? Why not? Many academics, you will find, had a creative side to them and did something, let's say, something else. I lived in Washington, D.C., and I was teaching at Federal City College, which is now the University of the District of Columbia. Federal City College in those days was the last land grant in Washington. That meant free people could come. They had a lottery to choose who was going to come. I had just come from teaching at Hunter College in New York City. Pure white, lily white, as a matter of fact, if I may be so bold, and women primarily. And here I am, and young, you know, the age young college kids are. But here my students were older. They were predominantly African American. They were also African. They had a couple other minorities, and there were a sprinkling of people, including myself, that were people of color, my color, okay, the Caucasian people. So it was quite an environment that I was living in. So I had the dream side. I'm sorry, I didn't have any dream side. I hadn't started that yet. I had the academic side, and I had the dancing side. So when I had a dream like this, what first came to me was accident. I'm going to hurt myself. I don't want to hurt myself. This is ridiculous. Silly dream. I put it aside, and I never thought about it. I never thought about it for 24 hours. 24 hours later, it's Saturday, and I'm living in Washington, D.C., as I said. And I'm a dancer, and I had a dance group. And I'm on my way to a dance rehearsal as my group. And I had a young man named Mike. He was one of my dancers, and he was sitting, I'm driving, and he was sitting here. Do you know what we called this back in 1971, where he was, the what?
Shotgun?
Shotgun? Well, close. It was the death seat. You know, we didn't have seat belts in those days, you know, and we always referred to that as the death seat. So that had nothing to do with the dream, by the way, but I'm just giving that as a little background touch. So we're driving down, and I think I'm on G Street in Washington, D.C., and I put, in the middle of traffic, Saturday morning, and I put my foot on the brake, and it went right to the floor. This is real life now. I could still picture that moment. It was 50 years ago. And I could still picture that moment. And there are all the cars here, and all the people on the sidewalk. And I didn't know what to do. You know, in a split second, Mike says, pull up the emergency. I tried, that doesn't work either. What do I do? So I said to myself, but kind of out loud, what do I do now? I heard a voice. And the voice said to me, make a quick right. So I look at the right, all the people are on the sidewalk, and I make a quick right, and I get between two men's clothing stores. And before I crashed, there was a person in front of the car. They got out of the way, and I crashed right into the wall between two men's clothing stores. The car, forget the car, it was a total write-off, okay? Mike gets out and stands up, and not a scratch on him. Marcia has a scratch on her knee. And I'm thinking about this, and I'm saying, isn't this strange? What happened? What happened? Okay, I couldn't quite put it together. And we had to get the car towed so I could get home, and Mike could get home. And as soon as I get in the house, the phone rings. And it's my mother. And my mother says, how's your car? Do I want to tell her that my car was smashed up when I'm supposed to be visiting her in 2 weeks? No, I wouldn't do that. I said, Mom, what kind of question is that? You don't ask how I am. You don't ask how Clyde is. Clyde is my cat. But you want to know, how is my car? And she started crying because she saw she upset me. She said, I didn't mean to upset you. I said, Mom, it's all right. I was just in a major accident, but I'm okay, and I'll come visit you as scheduled. So that was my first dream that I wrote down. How would you feel if this happened to you?
Did your car turn over?
Well, it didn't turn over. No, it didn't turn over, but it was in an accident, obviously.
Right.
It was an accordion. It was an accordion. It was unsalvageable. Unsalvageable. So I go home, and I'm kind of recovering. And I didn't tell you another part that was very strange. When my mother gave me this book. I don't think I said this part. And I touched it and I held it. I said, I'm going to meet this man. I'm going to know him someday. And that was another strange thing. So I had 3 strange things that happened. Knowing that I'm going to meet Sidney Omar, hearing a voice when I never heard a voice in my life. I didn't think I did anyway. And what was the other thing? How's your car? How's your car? For my mother. Okay, let me speed this up along. So now it's a week later. I'm living in Washington, D.C. Again, I have, I'm going to do it right. It's a week later, and I have this dream. I drive down 15th Street Northwest in Washington, D.C. on my way to an 11 a.m. meeting. And I apply the brake, and as before, my foot goes right to the floor. And I hear a ping, ping. And when I see a policeman coming toward me and notice a no parking sign, I ask the policeman if I could leave my car and go to the meeting. And he agrees. I left the car and I walked away. I woke up puzzled. Can you imagine why I was puzzled? Another break dream? Give me a break. Really, give me a break, huh? Another break dream. And I had a new car. I had a new car. So it was even more puzzling that I would have. So what do? You wait until the next day. You know, you write it down, and you wait until the next day. And the next day, guess what happened? I just told you. Literally, verbatim. Verbatim. Literally. You know, I'm a psychologist, you know. I don't believe in stuff like this. The only thing I don't have in the slide up here, when I asked if I could leave my car, I managed, though, even with the ping, to get the car, what would you call it? We just kind of got the car to the sidewalk. Do you know what happened in a brand new car? My brake cable snapped in a brand new car. So if you're like me, I'm not saying I'm a doubting Thomas. I just didn't know this other world. I didn't know that it existed. And here I am, one thing after another is starting to come. Well, let me give you some perspective for this. I didn't know at the time. It took me, I have to tell you this, about 3 to 4 years before I figured this whole thing out. But I'm going to tell you this right now so you have a perspective for what I'm talking about and where the precognition comes in. So I didn't know this right away, but you'll see where I'm going with this. Okay. I didn't know anything about extrasensory perception, you know, how the senses become extended, extended sense perception. This is a quick lesson, a quick tour for you to the tour. Clairvoyance. Clairvoyance is clear seeing. You're extending your sight to see something in a distant place. So you could take any of your 5 senses and they become extended. What happens when you extend your hearing? Clairaudience. Guess what I heard? Make a quick right. Remember, I heard make a quick right. If you touch something, clairsentience. Touching that book and knowing that I'm going to meet Sidney Omar. You'll have to wait and see if I did or didn't. I'll keep you in suspense about that. But that feeling, that clear feeling. Another part of this is telepathy. People communicating. This is common. Most people know about telepathy. They communicate mind to mind. They send thoughts and messages without speaking. My mother lived 500 miles away. And to pick this up and say, how's your car? Isn't that amazing? How many of you have had telepathic moments with loved ones in particular? I would bet everybody here has. And if you haven't, you'll even be more aware of it now that I'm mentioning it. That's very common between people that you are close to. And the third part is precognition. Knowing a future events in advance. And that was the 2 dreams that I had. Now remember, when we talk about precognition, the exciting thing is that we could change. I could have had the brakes fixed. If I had even a hint of something like this going on, I could have done that. I could have been empowered to do that, but I didn't. And even when the second dream came, I could have taken some action, which I didn't take. So let's see how my journey goes along. Well, how did this happen? Again, I want to provide a context for this. There is a place. If you can imagine your watch, your time, that's chronological. That's right here and now. But there is a time band, a zone called Chronos, okay? I'm sorry, I said it wrong. Kairos. And with Kairos time, past, present, and future all happen at the same time. It's out there. We are beyond time and space. That is out there. And wisdom and insights, the intuitive hits that we get, the pictures that we get precognitively, that's where they are. I must be a slow learner here.
You're doing great.
No, because I'm, with this. Okay, so Washington is getting a bit violent and volatile for me, and I really need to leave. The racial tension, I almost lost my life a couple times, and it was time to say sayonara, even though I had a position in a college. I had, if you want to call it immunity, I was there. But I was just so distraught by everything that was happening. Stokely Carmichael and H. Rap Brown are outside agitating, riots going on. And there I am. I couldn't move, I couldn't talk, I couldn't say anything. I lost my, So I decide it's time for me to go visit my island in the sun. Why not take a retreat and get away from it all? And my island in the sun was Nassau, Bahamas. Do you know Nassau? Maybe you know of it. You said, yeah. A beautiful, beautiful. The water is the color of your shirt there. And I was loving being on the island, and I was loving being there, except for one thing, employment. Who's going to support me? I'm a woman. I'm not married. I'm a woman by myself. And I had to have some means of income coming in. So I have this dream. I'm at an interview with my former boyfriend, Marty Shames, and I see a spa called the Renaissance Revitalization Center. I go in and I tell them I'm looking for a job. I woke up, what is this about? And by the way, I didn't indicate, and I want to underscore, when these dreams, the first two and this one and others came, they were crystal clear. They shook me by the shoulders and said, remember me, remember me. So here I am in the Bahamas Renaissance Revitalization Center. Well, wasn't it worth going to check it out? Of course it was. So I go and I check it out, and I asked to see the manager, and what do you think the receptionist said? Mr. Shames will be with you in a moment.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I still haven't caught on to this, by the way. You realize that. I'll underscore that. I still was not aware of precognition. Mr. Shames will see you in a moment. Well, look at this. A name is a name. And this man comes out and he talks to me, and my being from the States and having a PhD, he was very impressed with all of this. And they hired me. But there was a little caveat. I'm a foreigner. I'm an expatriate there. To them, I'm a foreigner, an expatriate. And they really needed a Bahamian to work there. So my hiring got complicated for a while. But I was with them for a while. But isn't it interesting how I was led to this Renaissance Revitalization Center? So I'm happy-go-lucky in the Bahamas. I'm dancing, not in a dance group. I'm looking for work, again, from there. I'm actually helping choreograph for a nightclub, a group of dancers. And I'm also doing some, the word got out that I was doing psychic work psychic intuitive work. And as the word got out, there's a Red Cross fair that they hold annually. And they wanted me to come and do readings. And I said, sure, I'll come and do readings. Well, that's something that I enjoyed doing. So one night, and I hit the wrong thing each time. No, one night I had this dream, and I had to go someplace to work, and I took my big red pocketbook, and I put it down. Later, somewhat alarmed, I found out that someone stole my pocketbook. So what do? I go to the fair, and I take my little red pocketbook. Forget about the big red pocketbook. So I'm doing my thing at the fair and reading and so on. And then I go to get my money, and it wasn't my money because I was donating everything. Where's my pocketbook? Someone stole my red pocketbook. Well, without belaboring the point, I was having dream after dream that they were all coming true. Was I learning? No. This next one also shows that I didn't learn. My dream, I frantically run to catch a connecting flight at the airport. In my dream, I lose my luggage and miss my flight. So if this happened to you, what might you think of? Little fear of flying, I don't want to go. You think of all these things going on. And I thought, that's silly. That's so silly. And I was flying from Nassau to, my father was going to pick me up at the Philadelphia airport. They live on the outskirts there in Bucks County. So the flight comes, it's a great flight, except that little did I know, it was 3 hours late. It was 3 hours late. So I get to the airport in Philadelphia, I'm running, 3 hours late, and I see my father, and he said, well, what's going on here? Where were you? What happened to you? Now, remember I said we could empower ourselves to make a change and to do something? What's the least I could have done was call my parents and say, just in case the plane is late, call the airport and check. Simple as that. Call the airport and check. But I didn't know. I didn't believe. I'm getting hit over the head. One thing after another is happening to me, and I'm simply not learning. I'm just not getting it. I'm not getting it. Okay. So I'm in Nassau, and eventually I move. I had to move. I thought I did it right that time. Okay. So I'm living in Hollywood, Florida now. I could just tell you I'm living in Hollywood and let you think that I had a glamorous life. And I had a good life, in Hollywood, Florida. And I have this dream. I'm with Carol Sloan, and we're intimate. And there's a warmth between us. We go for a walk along the beach and talk about the many things we share. We laugh and enjoy each other, and then I become sad because I have to go home. And I woke up and I said, this is interesting. I haven't seen Carl Sloan for 27 years. I went to high school with him. Why would that be coming up now? Now, remember, I'm learning all of this. I'm learning. So it just struck me, and it was such a strong dream. So the next day, I'm at the Renaissance Revitalization Center. I'm sorry. We already passed the Renaissance. I'm at Lilia Logette's center, not parapsychology, metaphysical society center. And people would come there for readings, and they were having a big fair coming up. So my office was in my home, my one-bedroom home, and I had the office in front, and I'm assigned, and this man comes in, and he was interested. He was from Miami, and here I am in Hollywood, and he said, I'm making a big change. I'm going away for a year, and I just, I'm kind of interested in this stuff, and this stuff, right? So we talk about this and that, and in the middle of the reading, I think to myself, oh my God, he looks just like Carl Sloan. What's going to happen here? what's going to happen here? You know, and I still didn't make any connection with it. But I was just spellbound, and I was fascinated. And how could this have happened? That here's Carl Sloane's a lookalike sitting right here. So we could proceed with the reading, and at the end he said, I'm very interested in what you're saying. And he picks up my card, and he said, I'd like to come back for a reading tomorrow. Okay, I'm still wondering where this is going to lead. And he comes back, and he was going on a 1-year leave to Long Beach, California. He's a professor of political science, and he had a fellowship for 1 year. And so he wanted to find out, you know, details, of course, about what that would be like and so on. And as we're talking, he said, you know, this is really interesting what you do. So the vibrations are starting to fly. So he leaves the next day, and he thinks I'm going to drive with him. He's driving out there. And every night we're on a phone call, you know, and the wires are burning up and they're sizzling, and he gets there finally to Long Beach, and we're back and forth, and I want you to come out, and so on. What? I've never done anything like this in my life. So he sends me a ticket, and I did go out. We did walk along the beach, Carl Sloane and I, just as it says, just as I dreamt it. We walked along the beach. We had many things. We shared. We laughed. We enjoyed each other, and I was sad because I have to go home. Now, I'm going to tell you, this is a life path dream. Have you ever heard that phrase, life path? It's a strong dream. And it's showing you someone or something. I mean, this was so vivid that it's going to be in your life. So, to paint the picture for you, Weston, he's out there, and he's getting more fascinated with psychic things. And he said, you know, I'm wondering, this project that I have to do, this research, I'm wondering if I could do something psychically, you know, find out something for business people. How can I connect the psychic and the business? So as it turned out, in going out there, I brought a book to him, and it was by a physicist, Dr. Douglas Dean, and it was called Executive ESP. And I don't want to take too much time to go into his research, but Douglas Dean was testing business people to determine how psychic they were, and do, you know, profits make profits. Profits, a psychic person, make profits, Profits. And that was his research. So this spurred Weston. Well, let me paint this quickly. From there, Weston said, I'm doing this research. He got very excited about the research he was doing. He turned it into a book called Intuitive Management. That's the next step, okay? That was, and of course, the book was dedicated to me because I helped him get that far. So by the years later, I'm living in Grand Rapids, Michigan with Jim, and somebody comes up to me one night, it was a Friday night, and shows me that little book and said, could you teach this course? And I look at the book and I show him it was dedicated to me. I said, of course, Intuitive Management. Now, I didn't tell him. What didn't I tell him? I know nothing about business. I know intuition, but I don't know anything about the business world. So I said, sure, I could teach a course. So, okay. The next thing, I end up for 10 years teaching undergraduate for 1 year and graduate for 10 years at Aquinas College in Grand Rapids, Michigan, to Masters in Management students going for their MBA. Integrating intuition and logic for managers. As a result of teaching that, that's how I wrote that book, the Intuition Workbook. It's a long story, getting it published. I didn't get it, of course, I didn't publish it, getting it published. But can you see that path? Now, there was another path. Weston got so enlightened and excited about intuition that he formed an organization called the Global Intuition Network. Okay, this went on for a couple years, and it was funded by a man who invented the hydraulic steering, Buck Charleston, and he was interested in intuition. So Buck funded the GIN, the Global Intuition Network. 2 years later, he gives it over to Jeffrey Mishlove. I don't know if you know Jeffrey Mishlove from Thinking Out Loud. Jeffrey gets a humongous grant from Buck Charleston, and Jeffrey is off studying remote viewing and other things. And I say at a certain point, hey, you know, I wonder if I could get some funding. And I got some funding to write the book that I was writing, not that book, but the book for my students, because there was no book available in anywhere to teach them about intuition in business. So I got funding for that. Jim was very active with me in getting a group started all over the world in reaching groups of study people that Buck financed. But can you see, all of this came out of that one dream. Thank you for your patience. I don't mean to belabor myself so much, but I mean to inspire you how to pay attention to a dream and the threads of it, the path of where it can lead. Now, I want to go back. Where am I? Oh, yes, I'm here in Florida. Another thing happened to me at the Florida Society for Psychical Research. That's where I met Wesson. Story time. So I'm doing readings there, and one day they call me. There's a woman and her companion, and they want readings. I didn't want to do it. It was one of those days you just want to stay in bed. And I came out and I see this woman. She's very imperious. And she has like a turban on, and the man with her was nondescript. And they come into my office and they sign the register. So we go through with the reading, and afterwards she says, "You were amazing. That was 99%. I purposely scribbled my handwriting so you didn't know who I was." And she's talking on, and she said, "Yeah, well, I give her this reading. I'm telling her about her famous son. He lives in California. They go back and forth visiting each other, and he's, you know, getting a reputation for what he's doing and how he's doing it. And it's all about the son and her." And so she was amazed that I picked that up. So she said, "I didn't tell you my name. My name is Jackie Stallone. Sylvester's mother. Sylvester's mother." And what did I know about Jackie Stallone? She's good friends with Sidney Omar. Are you ready for this? She loves astrology. I must have read this in the tabloids. I wouldn't have known it otherwise, you know. She loves astrology. So I blurted out. I mean, I didn't care about Sylvester meeting him. She wanted me to meet him. I didn't care about that. I would like to meet Sidney Omar. She said, "You would you?" And I said, "Yes." Okay. To cut to the bottom line, she connected me with Sidney Omar. Ready for this? I wrote as his feature writer for 6 books that went around the world. Remember, I held a book. I knew I was going to meet him someday and write for him. Now, I'm just saying, would a straight psychologist, you know, honor that or know anything about that? Do you want to know the titles of the book? Of course you do. Yeah. It's in my script. Yes. I started off in 1986 with astrology and tarot. The next year was astrology and dreams. Then the next year was a psychologist's use of the horoscope. The next one, I'm a little embarrassed to say, was my love life and astrology. I mean, this was Cindy. He was a Leo, and he had to be romantic about this. And then I thought he couldn't top that, but he did. The next year, he wanted me to write about your erotic nature in 1990. Hello? See, he was so thrilled that I had a PhD, and I'm a psychologist, and I'm, you know, indulging in all of this. And the last one I wrote, was astrology and reincarnation. Reincarnation. And that too ended up being very, very magical for me because I wasn't really doing reincarnation. He gave me that topic. So I learned past life regression. And it was in the book. And remember the couple from Indiana. She was so excited. She read about that, and she came from Indiana to Grand Rapids for me to do a regression with her. And that started me doing regressions and all. So that's not all part of this, but you see how all of this gets interconnected. It's the world of psi, and it's things that are opening. Now, before I leave Florida, I need to say that's where I finally came across a book. Edgar Mitchell, you all know the name, the astronaut. Psychic Explorations was his book about his going to the moon, and he was very interested in psi things. And he took the Zener cards and he was sending those symbols back to people. So it was quite amazing how this whole thing happened. Oh my God, what is it? And I'm reading this chapter on precognition. That is when I first learned about precognition, all the way into Florida. Okay. Are you still with me? I hope I'm not boring you with all these things, you know, because it's me. That's why I say boring. I'm not that narcissistic that I just get before a group. And now, well, we all like to hear about romance, right? And there's a scent of romance. And I kept dreaming. I'm having these dreams of romance in the air, and I meet Leo, and there's a very strong attraction, and eventually we have we're very intimate and form a special friendship. Well, here I am at the Florida Society for Psychical Research. I'm a healer as well, and on Friday night we had a healing group, and there was Leo in the healing group. Tall, blonde, charismatic, nice smile. Except for one thing, I had no interest in him. I was embarrassed when I saw him to have that intimacy in the dream with him. And it didn't happen one night. It happened 2 nights. It happened 3 nights. I said, oh, Lordy, please help me with this. This has to mean something else. So I'm beginning to learn, what do you think I'm beginning to learn? Nuance in the dream, that somebody is a symbol for something else. So I'm saying, okay, what could Leo be? Okay, Leo, that's an astrology sign. Maybe I'll meet a Leo, or maybe I'll meet a fire sign. And within 3 weeks, I met a man who was a fire sign. He was an Aries. He's here through all these adventures with me. He's sitting here. But it was so interesting to see how Leo with the fire, you know, Leo, the fire, translated to the fire. So, you know, as you're keeping your dreams, be very attuned and sensitive to the metaphors in them. Does that make sense? Time to say goodbye. I already introduced you to Naomi Rose, my mother. Okay. My mother died November 28th, 1986. Our anniversary was November 27th. It was interesting. And the next day, my mother was gone. So the point I'm trying to share with you, we all have dreams. Do we remember them? Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But very special dreams are with our loved ones when it's time to say goodbye. Again, I'm going to try to hasten this up. The event happened November 28th, but look when the dreams started, July 22nd. And I didn't know what they were. Okay. So just to go over some of these dreams and see how this correlated. Okay. November 28th, my mother dies. 2 days later, we're miraculously, because we lived in Grand Rapids, Michigan, miraculously we had the insight to go spend Thanksgiving with the folks that year. And so we are there with them. That's how we had tickets, and we were there planning on going there for the holiday. And 2 days after her funeral happened, on the 28th, you see that first dream from July? That's what happened. I'm at a party. Well, the party was a memorial. At a weekend party given at Pietro's. That's the restaurant near my parents' home. and in Doylestown. And I saw a lot of people I knew and I hadn't seen in a long time. And I wanted to go home and feed Bonnie and a little white dog. So when I had that dream in July, I didn't know what that was about. Well, I knew what Pietro's was. That's where my mother, their favorite restaurant. I knew the little white dog was her dog. I knew Bonnie was my cat that my mother had at her house. I knew all of that, but I didn't, put anything together in July. Okay, it's the next day, another dream, July 23rd. I meet Tom Hughes and I tell him about parapsychology. He mentions being a Scorpio and wants to talk some night. What is this about? Oh, Tom Hughes, yeah, in July. This is a character I see on TV, some program that we were watching. It's Tom Hughes. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't have any association to it. So there's my mother ending up in the hospital, and I meet her doctor. And guess what? His name wasn't Tom or Hughes, but he sure looked like that character. He looked, and I was flabbergasted to know that I had this months and months and months before, that I had this dream about this character, and there we are. So I thought, I wonder if this is a clue for me to talk to him about parapsychology. Because remember, I said, I talked to him about parapsychology, and I really wanted him to engage him to see how sensitive he was to the area of psi. Well, it was zero sensitivity, but I wanted to tell him about my mother's physical sensitivities. I said, don't over-medicate her. She is very, very sensitive. And I gave strict instructions, about that. Okay, so I had a lot of other dreams, by the way, leading up to November, but I just wanted to shorten this. The final dream was quite interesting because I'm at Lilia's. Lilia was the director of the Florida Society for Psychical Research, where we all came for our classes and did our healing work. And Mom was in the next room. She was sleeping when we got there. She couldn't get out of bed. A man that looked like Pat Raming felt upset about the breakup with his girlfriend. Strange. And this is before we went to visit my folks in November. So who is Pat Raming? He's somebody that we knew in the Bahamas. He wasn't, and I look at the comedian that night, we had gone, right after that, we had gone the next night to a comedy club, and I look at the comedian, and he looks just like Pat Raming. I said, Jim, look, Pat Raming. And he's talking, part of his comedy act was about the breakup with his girlfriend. Well, we get home, and the phone rings, and it's my father, and his first words are, your mom just left me. What? Can you see the layers of this going on? And he was joking around, but she left him. She was in the hospital. That was his way of telling us she was in the hospital. Well, let me jump to the bottom line. The bottom line is, again, all of this was going on, all of this happened. I got to see my mother. It was our anniversary, and she knew it, and she had some gifts for us, but she's in the hospital now. And I had a very loving moment with her, a private moment with her. And she looked at me and she said, you know, you're my best friend, a mother and a daughter. But a mother usually says that to a husband, but she was having problems with my father at that time. There was tension between them. So it was a very tender moment. But did I know she was going to die the next day? And I'll get to that in a minute. So it was very sweet, the ending. And the next day, guess what happened? They did over-medicate her, and her heart burst. Now, I keep using that word empower. And could I have taken the energy, having had these dreams, perhaps even figuring something out that it might have been my mother, maybe yes, maybe no. I could have told her. Now notice, I could not have changed the event of her dying. That's her soul control, under her soul. But I could have changed my behavior. I could have changed, told her what a wonderful mother she was, how fortunate I was to have her. Now something else was strange was happening. Up until that day before, the song, "Are You Going Away with No Word of Farewell?" kept playing in my head. I forget his name, the singer. Tom Paxton. I love Tom Paxton, the folk singer. And he kept, in my head, "Are you going away with no word of farewell?" That kept playing and playing and playing. And isn't that what happened? That my mother suddenly went away with no word of farewell. I don't want to leave you sad with this, but I want to say, when a loved one comes to you in a dream, especially if they look younger, or there's some message, take the power to say, what could I have said? What can I say? You know, if they're leaving, if they're not leaving, it doesn't matter. Maybe this is an opportunity for me to be able to say. Okay. Time to say goodbye. That's heavy duty, but I wish I had known this. See, I wish I had known this. That this is part of my talking and sharing so much of this. Now, jumping to health and healing. Our inner physician, I believe we all have a doctor inside of us, an intuitive healer. And now I'm married, and I'm living in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I had a little red bump on the end of my nose. It was so small. And I went to see a doctor. I dreamed that a tall female doctor gave me a diagnosis of cancer. In the dream, I was astounded by the pronouncement and called the doctor a quack and a phony for making me believe I had this dreadful disease. I strongly stated, I remember, in the dream I was going like this, "You're a quack, you're a phony, I don't have cancer." And I woke up, and what does every female do who has a dream like that? She gives herself a good feel, around to see what might be happening. It was so real, this dream. And I said, that is so strange, it is so strange. And by this time, you might assume, and you are right, that I'm writing all these dreams down. That's how I have them. So now we go back to the little real life, and the little red bump at the end of my nose. And I knew I had to see a dermatologist just to get a check on this. So I go in to a dermatologist I didn't know, and it was a short male. Now, remember you saw the tall female. Our dreams do this, dream distortion. So this short male comes, and he invites me inside to lay down on the table there. And I'm lying down, and suddenly I'm seeing blood splurting all over the place, and I see him doing some sewing. I said, "What's going on here? What is happening?" And he said, "Well, you might have cancer, so I have to do a biopsy." Whew, how invasive. He never asked me. He never said a word to me. But he just went about, and I'm a public figure at that time. I'm doing talks and workshops. So I was just appalled. I had no words, and it was already done. He took a slice out of my nose. And we're sitting there, and he said, "I'm going to send this away for a biopsy to see if you have cancer. But I'm pretty sure that you still need to have surgery. You still need to have some work done." At that moment, guess what happened? Bing, bing, I remember the dream. I remember the dream. And, you're a quack, you're a phony. And that gave me the courage to look this man and say, "Thanks, but no thanks." Because I had asked him before that, "How much would surgery be?" He said, "Oh, just $10,000. That's what he said. My Taurus rising was in an uproar, $10,000. But I said, I remembered the dream. And you see, this dream gave me the courage to say, no thanks, bye. So of course it turned out I didn't have cancer, and of course I got a second opinion. So whatever any outer doctor, medical doctor says, always get that second opinion from your own intuitive doctor. Okay. Now, I'm living in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I'm teaching a home study class in parapsychology. And I have a group of students. And they're really, really good. They're interested in the topic. The classroom is out of my home, and so on. And I'm teaching them about dreams. I'm teaching them about intuition. I'm teaching them how to notice the metaphors in their dreams. And they were getting very attuned to this whole area of intuition. So one gal has this dream. Her name was Kathy. And Kathy had this dream. The butler entered the room and presented the woman with a gift. He said, this is from your husband because he wants to see you happy. He placed in her hands a small painted porcelain Easter egg. She thought it was a lovely gift, but it wasn't Easter, and she was confused. On Easter, Kathy found out she was pregnant. That's not part of the dream, that last sentence. But on Easter, she found out that she was pregnant. And she had been trying IBS, she's been trying all kinds of things, and suddenly this Easter egg came. So this is just a sampling of how we began to work with things and just be so attuned to things. Well, the same group, I got them very interested in precognition. Programming dreams. The current name for program is incubating, but I still use the word programming. And Alan Vaughan had this wonderful book, The Edge of Tomorrow, and we followed his programming. Jim, you're on. Who is Alan Vaughan? Alan Vaughan was an incredible psychic. He was at one time the science editor of the New York Times. Talk about making switches in your career. And he became an incredible psychic. And this is a picture of Alan Vaughan. And in this handout that I'm giving you, this was the programming phrase that he used. Okay, let me have one. So we took a group, and I was talking to Alan, and I said, wouldn't it be interesting if we programmed something to see what would happen? And what we programmed was, show me the scene of the next immobilizing environmental situation. Now, can you believe this? We're in Grand Rapids, Michigan. You think this is cold? This is nothing compared to what we experienced in Grand Rapids. And it's February. So asking them to program something like this, I imagine that they would start dreaming about snowstorms and things of that sort. So when they had their responses coming up, oh, I didn't want that one yet. Here's a sample response. This still flabbergasts me to this day. They had responses. This is one sample. I see myself in thick rubber green boots. They're covered with brown wet mud. I have mud on my arms, and there is mud smudged on my face and clothes. Everywhere I look is thick, goopy mud. Who knew? We found out there were mudslides in Brazil. And of my 8 girls doing this, so many of them had this theme of mud in the middle of winter. So this fascinated me, the idea of programming a dream. I had this dream Do you know who Debbie Allen is from Fame, the choreographer? Yeah, yeah. So I'm talking to our mutual friend, choreographer, director, and dancer, Debbie Allen. And I tell her I'm trying to find Mike. And Debbie says he's living on the west side of New York. It was so real, Debbie saying this to me, and I know Debbie, so that wasn't a complete surprise. What did I have to lose? You know what I did? I called the phone operator in New York, and I said, I'd like to get the phone number of Mike Malone. So what do I have to lose? I called the number, and Mike answers the phone. And Mickey was my name in those days. He says, Mickey, how did you know I was here? I just moved here yesterday. Again, score one for our precognitive dreams, our dreams. And you know, sometimes when they come like this, you have to go and test them out. Now, I short-circuited things, but here you see, program a precognitive dream. There are many, many ways of doing this. And this isn't a research presentation tonight. It's my journey that I'm sharing with you. And Alan Bourne was part of my journey. And for a long time, I used this long programming phrase. But that's so long, you could cut that short. In going to sleep, I say, thank you, higher power or higher mind, for helping me fall asleep quickly, sleep through the night, and awaken in the morning with my dreams fresh in my mind. Now, Dale Graff, another researcher in this area, he simply says, what will I experience next week? Whatever phrase you use something simple and use something sweet. And this reminds me, I have bibliography. Last May, I had some of my papers left over, and not wanting to throw them out or have them go to waste, I brought them back to share with you a fuller bibliography for people with their dreams. Okay, so. Trying to pull it together. Last year, we being the International Association for the Study of Dreams, we were set to have our first ever conference in Ashland this past June. Guess why we didn't? You don't even have to guess. You don't have to be intuitive. The COVID, the scares, and everything that was going on. The hotel didn't even want to have anything to do with hiring a group to come in. So Ed Kellogg and Dale Graff and myself, and this is back in January, and we were so set on the conference being live, and the three of us strong precognitive dreamers, we said, we're separately each going to program and dream to see if we are going to have a live conference. So I have this dream in January, and this is for a June conference. So I'm with a group of people, and we're in a park or wooded-like area. Some are gathered in groups, talking, while others walked around. Organization was needed to put people into groups to decide what we're going to be doing. We needed to get into small groups. Then Ed Kellogg led a group of people who wanted to explore this nature-like setting. People were wearing shorts and no masks. This is in January, when everybody was wearing masks, and I have this. People were wearing shorts and no masks. I saw IASC people. They're like Linda Mastrangelo. So I had this dream, and I said, Ed, this has got to be a live conference dream. Let's see what Dale gets. And he said, yes, he had a dream too about, the hotel and this and that. Well, guess what happened? We didn't have a live conference. We had to go online because the situation was so bad. But what did happen, okay, forget that. What happened is on July 18th, Linda and her husband Eric came down, and we met with a couple other dreamers, and Ed in fact, led us on a hike through the woods. So I saw all of this in January happening. So it wasn't the conference. So sometimes, you know why I'm saying this? Specificity. You have to be very, very clear about what you're asking for when you program. And I was so excited to program and to get that dream. And it turned out that it came true, but not for that reason. So, precognitive dreams, very, very quickly. Bring us information. Now, on this sheet, I have the Dreamitarian diet. And Ed is a big proponent of this, Ed Kellogg. And once asked him, I said, you know, what diet are you on? How do you manage what? He said, well, my dreams tell me what to eat and not to eat. And in the past year, I started paying attention to this. And lo and behold, in my dreams, have an avocado every day. Another point. Start eating grapes, another dream. And then I was going to Tucson. We turned out to have a live conference this year in Tucson. And I didn't know what I was going to be eating there because my diet had changed, more plant-based. And sure enough, I'm having a dream, and it's telling me, make sure you get your grains and make sure that you have your nuts. And they had a couple other things for me to take along. So, you know, pay attention to this. Pay attention. Employment, you saw how I was led to the Renaissance Revitalization Center. And sure enough, I've been shown other employment opportunities. So, you know, for better or for worse, if you have something like that accident dream that I had, that has to empower you. That's a negative dream. But that has to empower you to take care of that. But what if you have a positive dream about employment? You know, follow it. What if you have a dream about baby coming in the family? Well, our kids realize they can't keep too much from us. They learn that because I will dream it. And sure enough, for the son in the family and his wife, I dream they're having a baby. And they live in Florida, and we're visiting down there. In front of everybody, I come out and I say, well, Sonia, I'm so happy to hear that you're having a baby. Poor girl didn't want anybody to know. They weren't married, and she didn't want anybody to know. And here I am, oh, they're having a baby. But of course, they love the baby. Now the baby, that baby that they had is having another baby right now. So the dream goes on. But this next one I really like. I dreamt that my friend Sharon Frankemont was writing a book, and she had her proposal in, and her agent was selling it to a publisher, and they were giving her a $10,000 advance. And that night, she told me, and that night I had a dream that she was getting $30,000. I said, Sharon, I dreamt you're getting $30,000. And she said, but they were absolutely adamant. $10,000, you're a new author, that is all you are getting. You know what? She got her agent to go back, and she got $30,000. And for a writer, for your first book, that is unprecedented, unprecedented. And it came, you know, in the dream. Okay. News about a contract. I had this dream of being robbed at gunpoint. Now that's kind of negative and it's kind of scary. And then when I thought about it, the next day I was expecting a contract for something. And it was telling me the contract was being held up. Easy, simple, simple. Now sometimes you get puzzling dream information. Anybody know this guy here? Bob Hayworth? He was a member of the Kingston Trio and he lives right here in Ashland. And I was delighted to hear him play. Did you know him, Nikki? I was delighted to hear him not too long ago. So in, let's see, my dream was 8/27. And I talked to Carol Lee about the pool being closed and wanting to find a watering hole. I see Bob Hayworth from the Kingston Trio coming up the hill, carrying his guitar or banjo behind him. I wonder where he will play and entertain us. Probably at Madeline Hill Park. I take off and I fly, literally, you know, lucid dreaming, fly to that area. I feel so good being airborne. And then I hear someone saying to me or someone else, congratulations on your wife's bereavement. Well, it turned out that a month later we were having a picnic at Mountain Meadow, where I live. And I didn't even know that Bob Hayworth was hired to be there. And when I started, Carol Lee, who was the fitness director there, she was in charge of the drinks. And I went to the picnic and I did say, where are the drinks? The watering hole, where are the drinks? And all of that was following, Bob Hayworth being there. But what didn't make sense to me for quite a while was somebody saying to me or someone else, congratulations on your wife's bereavement. Well, that got me scared. Who was this? Well, a dear friend of mine, right around this time, suddenly acquired complications, health complications with her liver. She went quickly. You know what that was? The liver going. And I was stunned, and I mentioned it to a friend, and he said to me, well, she graduated. And I said, what do you mean she graduated? And he said, well, that's what, Buddhists say. You graduate to another level. And that was a whole different perspective for me for the graduation. So, that was a separate event, hearing that. And then I went back to this dream, and I said, oh my God. And her husband was Jerry. And they were very good friends to Jim and I when we lived in California. So somebody's saying to me, congratulations on your wife's bereavement, saying that to Jerry. I never would have put that together, but here was the dreaming mind giving me that information. Hang on, we're almost done, I promise. Coming up here in Ashland, you lucky ducks, can you believe the International Association for the Study of Dreams is having its annual conference right here in Ashland? I put the date down. I put the website down on the sheet that you could go and get more information. I'm hoping, Nikki, as we come to that time, that we'll have some presentations here, as well, to share with people and to share, the programs.
Is Ed speaking at it?
Am I?
Is Ed Kellogg speaking at it?
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Yes. And Angel, if any of you know Angel Morgan, myself and Angel and Ed, we'll all be involved with the conference.